They say every child remembers the moment they felt unloved for the first time. But I remember the moment my parents left me forever. I was only 5, holding a melting ice cream, standing in a busy mall. And watching my parents walk away without looking back. Like I was an old toy they didn't want anymore. I didn't cry at first. I actually believed they were coming back. But when the lights of the mall dimmed, and every other child was being carried, pulled, or guided home, I realized something that no 5-year-old should ever have to understand. I had been abandoned. And 20 years later, those same parents, who never called, never searched, never cared, came back into my life only to do something even worse. They sued me for $2.7 million. Money that wasn't even mine. Money my adoptive dad left me, in his will. I still remember the smell of popcorn, the loud chatter, and the colorful lights blinking everywhere in the mall that day, the day my entire life shifted without me realizing it. I was holding my mom's hand, or at least, I thought she was still behind me. I had been so excited about the toy train display that I didn't notice her hand slipping away. I turned around with the biggest smile, ready to show her the little ticket they gave me, but she wasn't there. At first, I wasn't scared. I was too young to believe bad things happened on purpose. I thought she must have gone to buy something, or maybe she walked too fast. But then I saw my dad at a distance, near the exit, and I ran toward him, expecting him to pick me up. Instead, he looked at me like I was interrupting him. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like I wasn't his son. He whispered something to my mom, I couldn't hear it, and she nodded without even glancing at me. Then they walked away together. And I remember standing there, too confused to even move, holding my ice cream tighter as it dripped onto my wrist. I waited. That's the part that haunts me the most. The waiting, because waiting means hope. And hope is painful when you don't know it's already dead. I sat on a bench, swinging my legs, thinking they might surprise me. Maybe they were hiding. Maybe they wanted to see if I was brave. Maybe they'd come back with balloons or a big toy. Kids create stories in their heads to protect their hearts. And I did too. For as long as I could. But reality always wins. A lady with a security badge eventually noticed me alone. She tried asking questions, but the only thing I could tell her was my name and that my mommy and daddy were coming back. When she asked me what they looked like, I described them with a smile, not knowing those were the last words I would ever say about them as my parents. Hours passed. Security checked footage. And that was when they realized something I wasn't supposed to see. On the screen, my parents were walking fast, toward the parking lot, without looking back. No panic. No hesitation. They were leaving. Leaving me. Not losing me. Child services stepped in. And that night, I fell asleep in a stranger's office, hugging a teddy bear someone had handed me, not because I wanted it, but because I didn't know what else to hold on to. The next few months were a blur of foster homes, temporary beds, unfamiliar faces, and the quiet ache of realizing my parents weren't coming back. No one told me directly, I just learned it by noticing things. No one asked me what my parents' phone number was. No one told me they were looking for them. No one said, "We'll take you home soon." I overheard whispers. No records. The parents disappeared. Looks intentional. Words that meant nothing to me then but everything later. But then, when I was 7, everything changed again. That's the first time I met the man who would become my real father. My adoptive dad, Michael. I still remember him kneeling down so he was eye level with me, smiling gently, and asking, "Do you like dinosaurs?" I didn't answer. Trust was something I had already started losing. But instead of pushing me, he sat on the floor beside me and started drawing a T-Rex on a scrap piece of paper. I watched silently. And when he finished, he slid the paper to me and said, "He looks tough, right? But he still needs someone to take care of him." Something inside me softened at that. Maybe because I felt exactly like that dinosaur. Michael didn't adopt me quickly. He spent months visiting, bringing books, teaching me how to fix small gadgets, and showing me that kindness didn't always disappear. He never made promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he showed up every single time. And that was enough to make me believe again. By the time the adoption became official, he wasn't just a father to me. He was my safe place, my family, my teacher, my protector. Every birthday he celebrated with me felt like a patch over a torn part of my childhood. Every school event he attended made up for the ones no one came to before. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to speak up for myself, how to work hard, and how to treat people with respect. He never treated me like a charity case. Never treated me like a replacement for something he didn't have. He treated me like his son, completely and wholeheartedly. And for years, that was enough for me. Enough to make me forget the people who left me. Enough to let me grow without the weight of their absence crushing me. I didn't expect to ever hear their names again. I didn't expect them to come back. And I definitely didn't expect that when they finally did, it would be for money. It happened 2 weeks after my adoptive dad passed away. Losing him shattered me in ways I still haven't recovered from. He was everything I had. The only parent I knew. And while I was still trying to breathe through the grief, still trying to understand how to live without him, I got a letter. A legal notice. From 2 names I hadn't heard in nearly 2 decades. My biological parents. They were suing me for $2.7 million. The amount my adoptive dad left me in his will, when I first saw their names on that legal notice, I genuinely thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe they were different people with the same names. Maybe the lawyer sent the letter to the wrong address. Maybe life wasn't cruel enough to let the same people who abandoned me at 5 suddenly return to take away the last thing my adoptive dad ever gave me. But the universe has a twisted sense of timing. And cruelty is something it never runs out of. I stared at the paper for a long time, my hands shaking, the grief of losing my dad still raw, still tearing into my chest. How could they even know he died? How could they know about his will? And most importantly, why did they care now? The letter said they were entitled to a portion of the estate because they were my biological family. That phrase hit me harder than anything else printed on the paper. Biological family. 2 words that meant nothing to me. 2 words that belonged to strangers who left me in a mall with a melting ice cream and walked away like it was nothing. They were not my family. They were ghosts of a past I never asked for, never wanted, and never thought would come dragging into my life again. The next day, I met with my dad's lawyer, a calm older man named Harrison who had known my adoptive dad for years. He shook his head as soon as he read the notice. "They're after the money," he said flatly. "Not you. Not your well-being. Just the money." I already knew that, of course. But hearing someone else say it made the truth feel even colder. Harrison explained that technically, they had no legal grounds. Parents who abandon their child can't suddenly pop up decades later demanding inheritance. But they were making claims that required responses. Claims that could drag into court. Claims that would cost time, energy, and a level of emotional strength I didn't have. Didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my dad's workshop, the place he and I spent countless evenings repairing old radios, fixing clocks, or just talking about life. His tools were still on the table. His glasses were still next to the lamp. His coffee mug still sat by the window. Everything smelled like him. Everything felt like him. And sitting there, I asked myself the same question over and over, why now? Why show up after 20 years? Why come for something they had no part in building? They didn't raise me. They didn't feed me. They didn't care when I was scared, sick, lonely, or growing up. And yet, here they were, demanding millions like they had earned even a penny of it. The next morning, Harrison called me again. "They want a mediation meeting," he said. "Do you want to see them?" The question froze me. I had spent my entire life imagining what I would say if I ever saw them again. I wondered if they would regret leaving me. If they would apologize. If they would explain why. I used to imagine dramatic reunions, heartfelt confessions, tears, but those fantasies faded as I got older. Reality teaches you that people who leave rarely come back to say sorry. They come back when they want something. And suddenly, seeing them didn't feel like closure. It felt like reopening a wound I had barely survived. Still, a part of me needed answers. So I said yes. The meeting took place in a polished, cold conference room with fluorescent lights that buzzed quietly. I arrived early, my heartbeat uneven, my palms sweating. Harrison sat beside me, steady and calm, reminding me I didn't have to say anything I didn't want to. But when the door opened and they walked in, my breath caught in my throat. They looked older, of course. Time had etched lines on their faces, gray into their hair. But it was them. The same people who had held my hands when I learned to walk, and then let go when the world got slightly inconvenient. My biological mother sat down first, her eyes avoiding mine. My biological father followed, pretending to adjust his tie like he needed to look professional for the son he abandoned. I waited. I waited for a flicker of guilt in their expressions. A tremble. A crack. A sign that this meant anything to them. But all I saw was calculation. They didn't look at me like a son. They looked at me like a bank vault. My mother spoke first. "It's been a long time," she said, her voice flat, emotionless, like she was greeting an acquaintance she barely remembered. I didn't respond. I kept my eyes locked on hers, waiting for something human to emerge. It didn't. My father cleared his throat and said, "We've come to an agreement about the estate. We believe we should receive compensation." Compensation. The word echoed through my head like a slap. Compensation for what? For abandoning me? For traumatizing me? For disappearing while another man rebuilt my broken childhood piece by piece? I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. "Why did you leave me?" I finally asked. My voice was quiet, but the weight behind it felt tremendous. My mother blinked, surprised that I hadn't immediately folded under their presence. She hesitated, then whispered, "We weren't ready to raise a child." That was it. No apology. No remorse. No acknowledgement of the pain they caused. Just a lazy excuse tossed into the air like my childhood was nothing more than an inconvenience. My father added, "We were young, we made mistakes, but that doesn't change that we're your biological parents." Biological parents. They kept repeating those words like they were magic keys that could unlock millions of dollars. But they didn't know something important. Biology means nothing without love. Without effort. Without presence. Without even trying. "You left me in a mall," I said quietly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice." The silence in the room thickened. My mother looked away, my father frowned, and I felt a wave of power rise. Inside me, not anger, not hatred, but strength. The strength that came from surviving without them. Growing without them. Becoming someone despite them. They didn't come for a son. They came for a payout. And sitting there, watching them avoid every ounce of responsibility, I realized something painfully clear. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a business transaction. And they expected me to sign over my dad's legacy to people who didn't deserve a cent. People who didn't deserve even a memory of me. But they had no idea that the fight they were starting would destroy far more than their pride. Could feel Harrison watching me carefully, his eyes silently asking if I wanted to end the meeting. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I needed to hear the truth from them, even if it hurt. My father leaned forward, clasping his hands together like he was delivering some profound explanation. "We know you were adopted into a wealthy family," he said. "We heard your father had a successful business, and that he left everything to you. That doesn't seem fair when we're struggling. Struggling. That word tasted bitter. They had struggled, maybe. But they didn't struggle to find me. They didn't struggle to check if I was alive. They didn't struggle when they walked out of the mall and into a new life without their child. And now suddenly, they wanted fairness? My mother finally looked at me directly, her eyes hard, almost irritated. "We gave you life," she said. "We deserve something for that." Something inside me cracked, not from pain this time, but from disbelief. They had reduced my existence to a transaction. My life was a receipt they wanted refunded. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch, let it settle between us like a wall they could never climb again. Then I said the first thing that came to mind. "You didn't give me life," I whispered. "You gave me trauma." And I pointed at the framed photo of my adoptive dad sitting in my bag, "gave me everything you never did." My father scoffed, as if my emotions were an inconvenience. "We're trying to handle this civilly," he said. "But if you don't cooperate, we will pursue full legal action." Legal action. Against their own child. A child they abandoned. The absurdity of it made my stomach twist. Harrison leaned in, whispering, "You don't owe them anything. Don't let them intimidate you." But I wasn't intimidated anymore. Not after everything I had survived. Not after losing the only man who ever loved me genuinely. Their threats meant nothing compared to the pain I had already lived through. I stood up slowly, forcing them to look up at me. "Let me explain something," I said calmly. "You don't get to disappear for 20 years and come back because you saw a number on a piece of paper. You walked away from me. You left me alone and scared in a mall because you didn't want to be parents. Michael wanted to be a parent. And he earned every part of my life and my love. You earned nothing but distance." My mother's face turned angry, her jaw tightening. "You think you're better than us now," she snapped. "You think you're too good for the people who created you?" Her words hit like sparks trying to start a fire, but they fell dead and cold. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Harrison ended the meeting, giving them a firm, professional notice that we would not be settling or offering a single dollar. But I could feel their glares as we walked out. I could feel the resentment radiating from them, the entitlement dripping from their silence. They hadn't come for closure. They had come to collect what they believed the world owed them. And now that I refused, I knew it wasn't over. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. They claimed emotional connection. They claimed they tried searching for me but were misguided. They claimed I was taken from them. Lies. All lies. Lies written on official documents with their signatures proudly beneath them. Their audacity stunned the legal team, even Harrison. But what stunned me more was realizing that these strangers, these people who shared my DNA but nothing else, were willing to tear me apart publicly, legally, emotionally, just to get money. The court preparation took months. Every document, every photo from my childhood, every detail of my abandonment had to be presented. I had to relive memories I tried so hard to bury. The security footage. The reports. The statements. The cold descriptions of a child left alone. And through all of it, one thing kept me steady, Michael. Every memory of him felt like a light guiding me through the darkness my biological parents were trying to drag me into. His voice, his lessons, his quiet strength, they became my armor. The court date finally arrived. They sat across from me, wearing their best clothes, pretending to be grieving parents desperate to reclaim a relationship. Their lawyer painted them as victims of circumstance. Misguided youth. Regretful decisions. Tears streamed down my mother's face as she clutched a tissue dramatically. I almost laughed at the performance. Because the truth was simple, undeniable, unchangeable, they left me. And they didn't care enough to look back. When it was my turn to speak, I stood before the judge, my hands trembling slightly but my voice steady. I told him everything. Not as a victim. Not as someone seeking pity. But as someone who survived. I described them all. The waiting. The confusion. The years in foster homes. The nights spent wondering if I ever mattered to anyone. And then I told him about Michael, the father who picked me up when life dropped me. The man who taught me love, hope, discipline, and compassion. The man who gave me what they never did, a family. My mother tried to interrupt, claiming my memories were distorted. But the judge silenced her. The evidence was undeniable. The abandonment report. The security footage. The lack of contact. The absence of their names anywhere, in my life for 2 decades. When the judge delivered the verdict, my breath caught in my chest. My biological parents had no rights. No claim. No entitlement. And their lawsuit was dismissed entirely. Not only that, they were fined for false claims and emotional harassment. It was over. Just like that. Not with an apology. Not with closure. But with legal finality. They stormed out of the courtroom, my father muttering curses, my mother avoiding my eyes. And I felt something strange, not triumph. Not satisfaction. But release. The weight I had carried since I was 5 finally slid off my shoulders. That evening, I visited my adoptive dad's grave. I sat beside the stone, tracing his name with my fingers. I protected what you gave me, I whispered. I protected your legacy. And I hope I made you proud. The wind rustled the trees gently, almost like a nod. And for the first time since he passed, I felt a quiet sense of peace. I am who I am because of him. Not because of the people who left me in a mall. My real father didn't share my blood. He shared his life. And that's what family truly is.